Hey guys, we're pretty pumped about this video today about Kyrie Irving. Now, y'all know Kyrie, but a lot of you may not know why everybody seems to hate on him. So, in today's video, we're going to be covering some of the reasons that other players seem to hate Kyrie, whether it's as a person or a basketball player. But before we start, we want to make sure you stick around until the end of the video to find out about the biggest reason he's hated in the city of Boston. Believe me, you're not going to want to skip that part. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Kyrie Irving always ends up becoming a hot topic, no matter where he takes his talents.
Using some sage to cleanse the negative vibrations in the building.
Every time he heads to a new team, the narrative seems to stay exactly the same, that other NBA players simply don't like him that much. Obviously, that's mostly not true, though there are a few players out there who don't appreciate some of the things he does. Now, I for one can imagine that jealousy has to be one of the key reasons that other players wouldn't like Kyrie. After all, this dude's one of the most skilled ball handlers that the league has ever seen, probably since the great Allen Iverson was still getting playing time. Kyrie has quickness, athleticism, and handles to match any other guard in the NBA. I'm sure there's quite a few other players who can only dream of achieving the level of talent that he was blessed with, which could cause some under-the-radar issues. And of course, the anger from their jealousy could lead to frustration about his selfishness. While Kyrie isn't a blatantly selfish person off the court, he has made some moves in the past that really make you wonder about him. For example, when the COVID-19 pandemic was still in high effect, Kyrie was seen out at a party for a family member without a mask. At the time, it was a pretty big deal, and everybody started to chime in on their views about Kyrie as an individual. The timing for this whole ordeal was just bad. I mean, if it happened nowadays, it probably wouldn't have even been broadcasted at all. Irving is also known to just skip out on games when he feels like it. For other teammates who may be desperate for a roster spot and trying to do everything in their power to get minutes, this can come off as a very selfish move to be making. Now, nobody really knows the kind of mental issues that Kyrie could be going through, but other teammates often see his random disappearances as selfish and unpredictable. I know personally I would be incredibly mad if I was heading to practice every day and still riding the pine just for our team's star player to come in whenever he feels like it and get all the glory. Then, of course, you have his first change of scenery in the NBA, a move that didn't go over well by people inside the league. He randomly demanded a trade away from the Cleveland Cavaliers, leaving LeBron James to fend for himself against the Golden State Warriors that season. Irving said that he wanted to officially lead a basketball team. I guess he felt like he could never be able to achieve that while sitting in the shadow of LeBron, which makes sense to be honest with you. It was just the way that he went about the trade demand that kind of rubbed people the wrong way. For some players, it was like, Kyrie is a superstar who's on a fantastic roster, making NBA finals after finals, yet he's complaining about wanting to be a leader? LeBron in particular has said nothing bad about Kyrie ever, though he has gotten so good at this social media thing that there have been a few subtle jabs directed towards Irving in the past. Kyrie got his wish at the end of the day, though. The Boston Celtics ended up trading for him in exchange for Isaiah Thomas and a few other assets. And Irving's time with Boston further proved everybody's points that he was selfish and unpredictable. His time with that franchise is what really threw him down the likability rankings in the NBA, and it's something he's still barely recovering from. The whole reason he wanted to be there was to be the leader of the team, right? A group who had nothing but young players with superstar potential. And it looked like it was seriously the best fit he could have asked for. With guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that seemed to be a match made in heaven. However, it just didn't go well. Irving was injured for the majority of the year and sat out the entire postseason. He was held out and got to watch as the young Celtics marched through the first two rounds, only to lose to a very angry LeBron James in the Eastern Conference Finals. That deep playoff run had fans questioning whether or not they even needed Kyrie in the first place, with some even thinking that he was just dragging them down. This was the time that rumors and other stories started to burst out regarding his locker room presence. An anonymous Celtics player said that he completely admires Kyrie's skill on the court, but admitted it was wildly difficult to play alongside him because he always made it about himself. Shortly after that statement came out, an employee of the organization said that he, quote, takes the air out of the locker room, while also going on to mention his unpredictability. Fans got a whiff of these comments and closely examined him during games. And it looked to be true. He wasn't really mentoring the younger players on the roster, and people thought that he was shying away from the challenge that he basically demanded a few years ago in Cleveland. The leadership, or lack thereof, was clear during his time in Boston, and by the time he left the team, he didn't want to be the leader anymore. Hey, quick reminder, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to find out how Kyrie somehow made his departure from the Celtics even worse than it already was when he signed with a different team. I'm not even a Celtics fan, but I completely understand why most of those fans hate him so much. Kyrie also had a bit of a rough patch with Dion Waiters, a rift that's never been healed to date. Waiters wasn't much of a fan of Kyrie being added onto the Cavs roster back when he was drafted. He certainly wasn't happy that he was stealing all of his minutes and throwing him onto the bench. Waiters thought that he deserved more minutes and that he was a better ball player than Irving. Obviously, nowadays that's not true, but at the time there was a genuine argument that could be made over that. But management didn't see things his way though and sided with Irving, eventually disregarding Waiters and sending him away to another team. I'm almost certain that Waiters still doesn't like Kyrie to this day, though admittedly it isn't all Kyrie's fault. After all, he just got drafted to a random team and didn't have much choice. Still though, it was enough to anger a talented player. Now let's get into some of those off-court reasons that players don't seem to like Kyrie Irving. I do want to mention that it's not the entire league who doesn't like Kyrie. There's just a couple players that don't love him in the league for these upcoming reasons. The first would be that Kyrie fully believed that the earth was actually flat and not round.
When I started actually doing research on my own, but there is no real picture of Earth. Like, there's not one picture of Earth.
Immediately, this was met with a boatload of criticism, with some people, for whatever reason, holding on to a grudge because of it. These people seem to have forgotten that shortly after he admitted that, he actually walked back that statement and laughed it off, saying he was just trying to make an example but worded it wrong. He doesn't actually believe that the earth is flat, people, but some folks out there hear one thing and hold on to that for the rest of their lives. Now, the next one, though, is a pretty big reason. Of course, everybody's allowed to have their own opinions and lives, but when you attack or make fun of those decisions, it can ruffle some feathers. A reporter in a post-game interview wished Kyrie Irving a happy Thanksgiving right when he was done asking questions. But Kyrie immediately replied, "Fuck Thanksgiving," which got a ton of people riled up. It does make sense that he doesn't celebrate Thanksgiving due to his Native American heritage, but come on, he didn't have to say something like that when somebody was just trying to be nice to him. He later put out on Twitter that he didn't mean any disrespect to the holiday or to anybody who happens to celebrate it. For the second time now, though, he said something that got a lot of people upset and then admitted he was wrong and had to walk it back and apologize. However, as I mentioned in the last reason, some people simply don't get over things like this. Finally, it's Irving's loyalty that's made him a villain in the eyes of a lot of NBA players. As much as we don't get to see it anymore, there are players out there who want to spend their whole careers with just one team and stay loyal to that organization for believing in them. Kyrie doesn't seem to follow that trend whatsoever. When he just got up and left Cleveland randomly, fans just couldn't believe what he was saying. Despite continued success with the Cavs, he just wanted to leave to go improve his stats and become the number one option on a different team. Then when he was in Boston, he said to the crowd and fans that he wasn't leaving the team. The bad part was that he ended up leaving down the line and headed over to the Brooklyn Nets to chase a championship alongside Kevin Durant and James Harden. Now, before we wrap up this video, I'm going to add a little more insight into that switch of teams. Back in 2018, Kyrie was standing amongst all the Boston Celtics season ticket holders with a microphone in his hands right at center court. He was giving a speech out to all the fans who came there. Kyrie said towards the end that he was definitely re-signing with the organization at the end of the season.
You guys will have me back. I plan on re-signing here next year.
Boom!
The crowd almost couldn't believe what they heard and were super pumped for the rest of the year. But then, of course, later that season, the Celtics had an early playoff exit against the Milwaukee Bucks, and Kyrie ditched them in the offseason. That just left a bad look for fans of the team, and he began to be known as Kyrie the Liar and Kyrie the Super Diva. He was even booed relentlessly during his first playoff game back in the Celtics stadium when the Nets lined up against Boston in the first round of this past playoff run. Kyrie really is one of the most misunderstood players in all the NBA right now, but it doesn't seem like anybody's going to figure him out anytime soon. It appears like he just bounces around opinions and choices quite a bit, which I guess is perfectly fine. You do what you gotta do. It's just that kind of attitude and behavior just rubs some people the wrong way. Hopefully, the players that don't really like him right now start to see him off the basketball court and truly get to know him. The people that do really know him always have glowing things to say about the point guard. And with that inkling of positivity, we're going to wrap up today's video on the reasons that players just don't like Kyrie Irving. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to watch why everyone is obsessed with these Kyrie Irving fights next.